It's Friday, October 1st. We made it through September. Yesterday I tried to teach this class. I had some technical difficulties. I don't know if anyone from my Thursday classes showed up. But today I made sure that those problems weren't going to happen, so we should have a smooth running class today. Today we're going to be talking about Project 2 in greater detail, croquis. I'm going to go over in class for our in-class assignment. We're going to do two different methods of adding color, tracing, two different source materials, one if you hand drew it, another one with a photographic reference. Everybody's going to do both activities. Here, I can show it to you. Share my screen here. If you haven't gotten these files already, you will need to download this file, which is croquis tips in classwork. And we're going to do some image tracing of a hand-drawn figure. I'm going to show you how to delete the negative space to allow background gradients or photographs to appear. I'm going to show you how to do some layer effects, outer glow, drop shadow. We'll show you how to prep a photo for tracing with the pen tool if you want to go that route. And I'm going to show you how to do both variable line widths, which I have a little how to do it right here for our eyes. And then we're going to do like a special brush definition for the hands, and that how to do that is over here. And then I'm going to show you some techniques on how to draw a 9-heads figure with a photograph, some complicated areas. I'm going to walk you through how to do hands that are covering a body or necks that are covered by hair, things like that. Right, anyone have any questions or concerns before I start? So if I go over here to our course content into the lab folder, we are in week 5, I believe. So you have these two files here. And when you're done, we're going to click on this header. We're going to upload the croquis tips to Blackboard before our lab next week. And Project 2 will be due before lab next week. Now Project 2, I'll talk about that in about 5 minutes. So let's go to the Spark presentation here for this week. It's week 5, talking about some fashion croquis here. I briefly covered this in lecture, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. But basically, you look at professional designers, and I should have talked about the Pantone. I'll talk about that next week. So part of the Pantone color calendar, the color research report for upcoming years, for like 2022, 2023, they interview designers and they show them the palette of colors that are going to be in season. And then these designers will draw croquis. And you can see drawings like this in that count. I'll provide that next week. But you can see the variety of styles of professional designers. Some of them, a lot of them choose not to draw faces. For this class, until you become famous, you will be drawing faces and hands and feet for me. But then, you know, after you become famous, you can develop your own style. Some of them draw highlights on the skin. Some choose not to draw various parts of the body. Some people have black outlines around their images, and some people have no outlines, and you can do both of these styles in Illustrator as well. This one has a little bit of a background color for contrast and some shading, and I'll show you how to do that as well in class. Some designers just go completely abstract when they want to just convey a texture or movement. And then the poses are quite different. You have some, usually they're straightforward or 3/4. You have some dynamic poses of people walking. And look how long the legs are. This is even longer than a 9-heads model. This is like a 12 or 14 heads model. The reason why we stretch the legs out is so that while the designer is drawing fabric on the croquis, they're going to have a great deal of freedom to show just how fabric is draping, how it's flowing, how it's swishing around. Long necks too, so you have room for collars and other details of your garment. some students or some designers will bring in Photoshop textures of stuff and mix it with Illustrator. Welcome to do that for your final project. But for this project, we're doing everything with the pen tool or imagetrace. Here's some more examples of long, flowy garments and optional outlines. All that we ask is that you stay consistent with your drawing style. If you want to have lots of black outlines, you can. If you want to have more abstract, no outlines, you can achieve that as well. Also notice, we have a little bit of shading on the body, showing where the fabric will create shadow and visual interest, and I'll show you how to do that as well. Right? And here's some more abstract croquis. We're not quite at this level yet. I do want your croquis to look like people. All right. Here's another example of why we lengthen the legs out. Due to the camera angle and an optical principle called foreshortening, some of these appendages, when you do a straight trace, they look suddenly stunted because we don't have the shading here. So we will, stretch out the legs to give that opportunity, that illusion of long features. And then we're going to do some practice of these techniques in Illustrator today. And then I'll talk about, after we're done with that, I'll talk about project 2. Or should I talk about project 2 now? It's up to you. What do you guys think? Should I talk about project 2 some more, or walk through the exercise and then talk about project 2? Any opinion?
Walk through the exercise first.
All right, we can do that. Let's do that. So here's my Illustrator file, and I've opened it up in Illustrator, and I'm going to reset my workspace. So the first 3 things I always do when I open up Illustrator, or I wish I always did, I don't always do this, but I'm going to go to Window, Workspace, and I'm going to reset, make sure I'm on Essentials Classic, and I'm going to reset Essentials Classic. Yesterday I had an issue where my properties panels were not showing up no matter what I did, and it was my computer crashed overnight when I had the file open, and it corrupted my preferences. So Adobe saves, if your computer crashes, it saves the work you were doing when your computer crashed, if you have it saved at least once. So I have not saved it yet. I'm not exactly sure if it will create a recovery file for me. So I want to make sure that happens, especially when we start working on these bigger projects. You always want to save your work first. So I did my workspace here. I'm going to view, I'm going to make sure my edges are showing. It says hide edges, so I'm good. Now I'm going to save it. I'm going to go navigate to some place on my computer where I should have a Fashion Tech folder, probably in your documents area or your desktop. And I'm going to go into my AI folder. We'll call this one, it's getting quite crowded, you see. Croquis. I'm going to delete the CW5 and put just my last name, first initial. And I could even call this one Friday. I'm doing that because I have so many files. You don't have to do that Friday part. All right, so I'm going to say OK with this next pop-up, and now my file has my name on it. And so it should continually kind of, it's not real perfect, but it's better than nothing. It will kind of, especially in a crash situation, it'll save part of your work. Hopefully, God forbid. All right, let's get started. So we talked about imagetrace last week and live paint and how fantastic it is if you know how to draw, or you have some doodles. You could even just take some scribbles you have that may or may not be intended to become artwork, and run it through imagetrace and see what it looks like, and you're going to get a lot of stylized. And so you see, I think AOC wore a dress recently at the Met Gala, and there was some text just scrawled on her, and that was just some people taking some text that they possibly drew with a pencil or a marker, and then taking a picture of it and bringing it into Illustrator, hitting image trace, and then filling it with color, and then printing it out onto fabric. So handwriting or doodles or anything can be done with image trace. Just remember, when you hit the image trace button, as I'm going to do here, you have several options of how you want to do it: in black and white, which doesn't have a lot of detail, in grayscale, which has a tremendous amount of detail, and even like color. And you can do an actual color and in image trace, and you get some interesting results. Don't do this. I just want to show you. For example, like if I took this figure right here and I hit the image trace button, it's going to give me like a black and white render. And you see like a lot of T-shirts or artwork where somebody simply all they did was just hit the image trace button once. And when you have your image trace panel here, you can of course mess with the threshold and get different kinds of she's not in the sun a little bit too much. Over here we have some presets here. Like if I went 16 color, you're going to see this photograph look almost just like an actual photograph. So we do want you on your own time to goof around with the image trace. There's a lot of graphic designers that are making money, and all they learned how to do in Illustrator is the image trace button, right? So you can see the fidelity of the photo here. So if you were going to print a photo onto fabric, you would have to use one of these. You could do high fidelity photo too. Let's see what happens when we do that. Look, 20,000 potential anchor points if we were to trace this in color. The pen tool, you drop one anchor, you drop two anchors. 20,000 anchors gonna pop up in this photograph. See what it looks like. I've never done this. And this will make your computer work hard. So this looks just like a photograph. I don't see any difference really from the original photograph unless I zoom in. Then you start to see all the different oh, this photograph is locked down, isn't it? Whoops. Right, so I just I'm gonna go back to 16 color because that one took too long. I just zoomed out of that. Let me show this to you one more time. Again, you don't have to do it with this photograph. I'm just showing you that it can do color. I'll show this in greater detail when we talk about our scarves and we start printing out for Project 4. But you see how it laid down about 20,000 anchors here. This is just 16 colors instead of all the color. And if I were to hit this expand button, you can see all the shapes. If I were to ungroup it, I could pull these shapes apart. Let's see, object ungroup. What is ungrouped? You can start to pull these shapes out and start editing and deleting stuff. It's kind of interesting, but and we're not going to do that. Just would like to show you this tool. You can experiment with your own photos, with your own drawings. You can go to any number of websites and upload your work, and if people like it, you get a little bit of a kickback. And that's why we start talking about Creative Commons and copyright being so important in case you want to start making money. A little side hustle. All right. Now I got to wait for this to finish before I can go back to our work. I'm just putting the picture back where it was, or how it was. It's a great little study of shading, though. You can see in the hair, there's really just 3 different colors in this brown hair. Oh, it's still going. I'm sorry, one more time. How many times did I do this? There we go. All right. All right, let's go. So Last week I said if you knew how to draw and you wanted to draw your clothing from Project 1 onto your croquis, that you should start that. If you have it done, this is what you're going to do. You're going to take a picture of your work, and you're going to open it in Illustrator and copy and paste it in. For some reason, the keyboard shortcuts don't always work with copy and pasting photos. I have better results when I use my selection tool, this black triangle, click on the photo, and then go edit, and then actually go down to the actually select copy, and then paste. Then it seems to work better than just copy and paste. I'm going to select the photo first, and we're going to do this like multi-step process where I hit the image trace button, and I'm going to choose a different method of tracing. We can open this image trace panel right here. It looks like a jar of peanut butter, like the ingredients label. And I'm going to go to shades of gray here. We see 2,500 anchors. This is a pretty good render. I might have some space here that I need to fill the gaps. So actually with this photo, I'd like you to experiment with it, but for this one, you can keep it black and white. I think that one would be the easiest. And then now I can clearly see where my gaps are, where I need to fill these holes. So I'm going to increase the threshold a little bit. But I asked you when you draw these not to render the shading in your hand drawing, because once you image trace it, it kind of gets a little bit hard to differentiate all that nice detail. We can add this shading with Illustrator later, and I'll show you how to do that. But right now I want to make sure my shapes are closed. So that's why we should ink the outline when possible, because then it reduces the intensity that I have to change this threshold. If you have a really nicely defined line, you can leave your threshold low without making them all super thick. Because when you make them thick, you start losing detail in the face, hair, or wherever you have drawings here. So I'm going to zoom in here, and I see a gap on the leg. So after I hit the image trace, you want to turn these into anchors. I have about 2,200 anchors here. So you hit the expand button. So first step, selection tool, click on the photo. Second step, image trace. Third step, image trace panel, adjust threshold. Fourth step, hit the expand button, right? And then fifth step is going to be object live paint make. And then we see our transformation handles here will turn into little broken ice cubes once we do that, right? Now, if I grab my paint bucket tool, the shortcut for that is the letter K. If I go to my shape builder tool here and hold that button down, you can see your paint bucket tools underneath this shape builder tool. And here's my swatch panel. These are my colors. And you can see things highlighting, right? So if I choose a flesh color here, and here on the hand, let me deselect the whole body here so we can see what we're doing here. You can see it highlighting various parts of the clothing as well. Now if I try to do this leg here, it spills out into this interior space, which I don't want. So again, I showed you how to fix this last week. We did several methods. One, we took the pencil tool, which is under the shaper tool. You could use the pen tool, or in this case, I think I can quickly probably drag this line. Whoops, drag this line down. If I grab my direct select tool and look for an anchor here, I could probably cheat this and just cover that. If I cover that and then grab my paint bucket tool, I can seal that hole. And another thing I was showing is gradients. Let's say you wanted to give a little bit of a gradient to her skin here. All you have to do is, for your paint bucket, is you choose a gradient color. So we have like a black and white gradient here. And if I were to, oops, let's say I were to fill like her leg with a black and white gradient. Now, it looks like she's wearing some kind of leggings or something like that. But if I wanted to change the color, so I have this gradient selected as a fill. and I have my my paint bucket tool, right? If I want to change the color, I just go over here to this properties panel and click on the gradient. And now you can see I have, I can change how the gradient is made, if it's a circular or a band. I can also change the color here. So if you want to add a color, you just click on this color bar and you can add a color. If you want to remove a color, you just pull that off. If you want to change a color, you just double click on the actual slider and you can choose a preset color, or you can go to your color palette and choose, double click here and choose any color. You can even sample any color from a photograph if you want to match a color perfectly. I'm just going to choose like a regular skin tone, right? And once you have that, this is the slider where you can adjust how much of one color versus another color. I could even change this from white to like a lighter skin tone to create like a, maybe like a skin gradient. And once I have a good gradient here, here's my tile, I can take this swatch that I created and I can drag it into my swatch panel. And now I have a gradient, a skin color gradient that I can use. So if I go in here and fill my leg, you can see now I've got a little gradient here that gives a little bit of a volume to my body. It's real subtle, but you know, it's an option. You don't have to do that. I'll show you how to draw in shading in a bit. See, that filled up because her arm is a hole right here. So I'm going to grab my direct select tool and drag that over. I can fill that. All right, so there's that, right? Now, if you have a background, if you want to get rid of the background color to show a background gradient or a photograph, all you got to do is grab your direct select tool and find the corners of your drawing and delete those anchors. So I'll just hit delete. And then you see the background color has vanished, right? If you have OCD and you want to get rid of all of them for it. But I do have a problem with this area between her legs. There's no, I can't see the color there. So to get rid of that, I'm going to bring my paint bucket tool back. And of all the colors I'm going to choose this no color color. And if I click on that space between her legs, that white space is gone, and between the strap of her purse. Okay. Is that it? Wait, there's more. It does say here I'd like you to use a layer effect to stylize, a drop shadow. So if I take my selection tool and I click on this model here, and I go over to layer effects, and I go to stylize, and there's something here called drop shadow. And you see this little drop shadow it adds? Right now it's kind of going to the right, and that is called my offset here. The shadow is going 7 pixels to the right. This is my screen mode, and you can keep it on normal if you want. There's like deep dives you can take on YouTube for all these different screen modes for drop shadow and outer glow. Take a look at that if it interests you. Here's how far the blur goes on your drop shadow. This is the opacity of your drop shadow, and this is the color of your drop shadow. You know, you can change it to even white if you wanted. But I'm going to go back to black. Back to black. Okay, so hit OK here. You see a little drop shadow adds a little bit of volume, a little bit of pop from your background. If you want to create like a little, if you don't want her floating in space and you want to create a horizon line, you just grab your pen tool and you can draw a line. Hold the shift key down to make it straight. Between the ankle and the calf is where the horizon line goes. So I'm clearly not drawing with any color here, so I'm going to select black and maybe make it thicker. Now I need to put this line behind my model. So if I open my layer panel, and I've got tons of layers at this point, I'm not going to hunt around. I'm just going to take this model and bring it forward wherever this line is. I'm going to just take this model, say right click and say arrange, bring to the front. Now I've covered this line. And that's all you need for horizon line. If you want to add some visual interest, you can change the brush. Click on your your line here, if you go over to this little Campbell's soup can with paint brushes in it, you click on that, you see all of our brush, saying, what is this, ribbon brush? Look at that. You can choose you can choose various different kinds of lines. Right down here, there's a little library button. If you click on that, you have all different kinds of brushes you can experiment with. I'm going to go to artistic here and charcoal pencil, and you'll see lots of different lines, and you can change your line to something a little bit more organic if you like, and it's behind the figure, between the calf and the ankle. You see, if you put it down here under her toes, it looks like she's tiptoeing, standing on top of like a wire, like on top of something. We don't want to give that illusion. You don't want to put it way back here either. Just between the calf and the ankle, it's a good spot. If you have a photograph like this one, you don't need the horizon line because the photograph makes your horizon. So for this one, you don't have to do the gradients on the legs if that's too challenging for you, but I just wanted to let you know that's an option. I do need to see some drop shadow on here. I do need to see these shapes cut out. I would like to see a horizon line here. All right, so let me show you another one. If you've already drawn out in color and you want to use one of those croquis, how to bring that in. So you take a picture of this. Again, we're going to hit the image trace again. Not black and white. Let's go to, I'm going to go to 16 color for this one. And as you can see, now I have a color render, which I can scale, and it'll always stay clear instead of that pixel drawing. And I want to hit the expand button to turn all these into anchors, right? And yeah, now I'm going to remove, ooh, look at that. I'm going to remove these colored, so these corner anchors, excuse me, oh my God. To get rid of this white background. Here we go. There's a couple, there's like 2 anchors in each corner here. And then you can see how I'm peeling away this background. I got some orphan anchors over here. Now I want to get rid of this color here, so it won't let me paint because I haven't turned this into a live paint object. So object, live paint, make. And I'll get my paint bucket tool and I'll choose no color. It's my selection tool. So you can see I'm having a little bit of trouble distinguishing from the details of this photograph and my croquis. You could like lighten the opacity of your photograph if you don't want to mess with your croquis, but I would like to see for this example, for this in-class work, let's put some outer glow on this. So I'm going to take my selection tool, click on my model, we'll go to effects, we'll go to stylize, and I'm going to select outer glow. And you can see a little bit of outer glow on here. Outer glow is just like drop shadow, except drop shadow has like an angle, like it goes to the right or to the left or up or down. Outer glow is just an even distribution of a contrasting color of your choice. So I'm going to choose, let's see, a white color for my outer glow. And you can change the mode here. Let's go to normal. Hit OK. There's my outer glow. You know, you can experiment with it if you want to make it deeper or wider, but I just want to make it stand out, make my drawing stand out from the background photograph a little bit. Anyway, that's all we need to do for that one. Image trace, use 16 color, make background visible. All right. Now, that's if you drew your croquis. And as you can see, if you hand draw it with your clothing, it's the easiest and fastest way. It's just your lines aren't super clean. But, you know, it can look pretty cool. You probably will have to draw a separate face, regardless of whether you do the photograph or the hand-drawn method, because if you don't ink it and you drag your threshold value up, you're going to lose your details there. So you'll have to redraw a face and plop it back on there. And I'll show you how to do that in a second. All right, so if you have a photograph that you want to trace, we're going to have to bring this into Photoshop and elongate the legs here. But I don't want to elongate her hands. So a lot of people just grab this whole bottom area and elongate it, and then you get like these enormous flipper clown feet and orangutan fingers, and we don't want that. So I'm going to show you how to fix all that. I'm going to take this photo here, and like I said before, I'm going to go click it with my selection tool, and I'm going to copy from this edit menu, copy. Then when I go into Photoshop, if you go into a new file, if you have something saved into your clipboard, if you did a copy, your clipboard option should automatically pop up. If that's the case, just hit create, because Photoshop knows what you're doing, can anticipate. Now if I go to paste, it says, how do I want to paste this? I want to paste this as pixels because I'm going to be manipulating this in Photoshop. So now you see a blue, if you were to drag the photo from your desktop or drag it from another app, you will see this red or blue X over your photo. That means the photo isn't actually embedded into your document. It's just it's like a hyperlink. So we want to put this picture into our artboard. So you do that by just clicking this check mark here in Photoshop. Photoshop wants you to click this check mark to verify every decision that you make, every big decision, so that you don't lose your work, I guess. So I'm happy with this, Photoshop. Okay, let's click it. All right, so now you'll see Photoshop looks very similar to Illustrator with the exception of, so here are the Illustrator tools. We have our pen tool, text tool, selection tool, rectangle tool, hand, zoom. Over here in the middle we have photo retouching tools, which we'll explore next week. And then over here we have our selection tools. This is our move tool, which has replaced the selection tool. And we have a marquee box for selecting squares, and then we have our lasso tool for being able to draw in specific shapes to select, right? So I'm going to, I want to stretch out her legs, but I don't want to create these flipper feet. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to squish her feet so that when I stretch her legs out with her feet, everything will be correct proportions. So I'm going to grab this marquee box here, and I'm going to, this rectangular one, and I'm going to click from outside the artwork here around her feet, right? Control or Command D will deselect any mistakes you make, and you can try again. Control D. So I don't want you going in here and doing the feet because this creates visual confusion. Let's just click from the outside here. And then let's say I'm a little bit too high on the ankles, not enough toe space. You can just hit the arrow key and you can move your selection. Now I want to squish this, so I'm going to do a free transform. That's over here under edit and free transform here. But it's grayed out. It's not letting me do it. So why is that? Let's open our layer panel and figure out, where's my layer panel? Windows, so workspace in Photoshop is just essentials. There's no essentials classic. So I'm going to reset my essentials here. Here's my layer panel. So you can see I can't transform this. When I go to edit, free transform is grayed out. In your layer panel in Photoshop, it's very different from Illustrator in the respect you have to click on the layer you want to edit. And oftentimes in Photoshop, you'll click out of the layer into a different layer. You need to go back to your layer panel and click on the layer you want to edit. So this will become more evident as we move on. So I'm going to make sure this photograph layer is selected. And now I'm going to go to edit, free transform. Now we can see our options here. Free transform shortcut is Control T, Command T if you have a Mac. And then opposite of Illustrator in a genius move. Now if I shrink it, you see how it's doing a symmetrical shrinking by default. If you want to do asymmetrical shrinking, you have to hold the Shift key down, which is opposite of Illustrator now. So I'm going to do that about 50%. Hit the check mark when you're done, when you're happy with that. Now I have stubby feet, and I want to elongate the legs, so I'm going to grab her legs and feet together. But as you can see, I went a little bit too high, so I can use my arrow keys to adjust this. And I want to remove her hands here from this selection. So I'm going to grab this lasso tool, and there is a way to add onto the selection. Like if I hold my shift key down, watch, there's a little plus sign up here, and you can add onto your selection. You see that? But I want to remove it, so I'm going to hold my Alt key. It's the Option key for Mac users here. See a little minus sign up here on your lasso key. And I'm going to carve out these hands from my selection because I don't want the hands to stretch with the legs here. All right. Now that I have that, we'll just do a free transform, edit free transform. I'm going to hold, oh wait, I don't have enough space here. Oh my goodness. You know what? I forgot to create more space on my canvas so I can stretch it. There's no space here, so we need to stretch out this canvas space. Up here under the image drop down is canvas size. And I need to add 20% to the height. And I you know, despite my genetic, supposed genetic advantage to doing math, it's not there. I was born in Pittsburgh. I'm just going to change this to percent here. At 100%, I can just add 20 here. 20% to my height, hit OK, boom. So now I've added 10% on top, 10% on bottom. Grab my move tool, we'll move the model up here. And now I'm going to stretch out her legs 20%. So I'm going to grab my marquee box. We'll grab this. I'm going to adjust this as much leg as I can. And I'm going to grab my lasso tool here. I'm going to hold my Alt key, Option key down if you have a Mac, and I'm going to carve out her hands here. And now I'm going to transform this, edit, free transform. I'm going to hold the shift key down. Boom, boom, boom. Look at that. And then hit the check mark, hit Control or Command D to deselect. And now I have an image with regular size feet, regular size hands, and ridiculously long legs, right? Once I have this image here, I can do a select all, and I can do a copy. And then I can go to Illustrator here, and we'll just paste it right there. That's all you got to do for this picture. So that's her. She'll be poking out. I guess maybe I did like a 10 heads tall before, but yeah, go ahead and put that there. Okay, so there's that. That's how you stretch out photographs. Now let me go to tracing. So if you have, excuse me, if you have a close-up face and you're going to do some tracing on the face, there are some brush definitions you can use for this. So like if you were to trace this with the regular pen tool, I'm going to choose some black ink here, and we'll go like a 2-point thickness, right? And let me just show this to you. Clip that handle, right? We've got some lines here. Let me just show you this. All right. So if I were to grab what I just drew and drag it over here, it doesn't quite look like an eyeball, right? So to get these lines to have some visual interest, I'm going to grab these lines here. And with my variable line width, that's this drop down. So once you have your selection tool and you actually select a group of lines, this property bar will open up, and this second drop down allows you to change the endpoints of your line. So I'm going to make it like pointed on both ends. Looks a little sharper. This one here, I could just make it super thick. And then for this, I could do like a kind of bulge in the middle. You get kind of like an eyebrow shape, right? I'm going to do, my circles here. To get a perfect circle, hold the shift key down, of course. we'll fill that with the color. Let's do some Betty Davis eyes here. This is more like Hulk eyes. I want to collapse this circle, so I'm going to grab my direct select tool, and I'm going to grab this top anchor, and I'm going to just adjust this circle so that I can hide it under this stuff right here. So there's my eyeball here. You see this iris I drew on top of the eyeliner? I want to change that. I want my eyeball under my eyeliner. So here's my layer panel. I'm going to drag this iris here and drag it under my eyeliner. I could make my eyeliner a little thicker, maybe. All right, so let me move this over. I forgot the pupil. So let's give that a black fill. And we'll also use the direct select tool to reshape this iris here. And then I do need some more circles with like a white fill. So I'll draw like a circle right there, and then another circle. These are my reflections here. All right, so let me take these shapes and, or let me just move all this together. And once I'll grab all these and group it, object group. Now I have an eyeball, or you have an eyeball. You can use this eye for your project, right? So there's my eye. I changed the shape of the top one of this iris here. To look like there's an eyelid above it, right? And that's how you that's how you create some visual interest with this variable width line here. For something like this hand shape, so you see something like this where you have finger lines, right? And it's hard to draw this, so I'm going to show you. I would just draw like an overall shape here, just like we did with our flats. So there's a finger line, and I can't see what I'm doing because there's a fill here. Let me turn this fill off. P for pen tool, continue this line here. P for pen tool. So now I'm drawing like two separate lines coming from different directions. Let's see if I can join these. So sometimes like this, you see a thumb is going over your fingers. You can actually like connect these lines here. And then we'll draw these lines in separate. So here, I'm gonna, sometimes you can draw on top of a line, sometimes you can't, it'll add an anchor. So just to be safe, I think I can do this. It's giving me the option. So there's one line, and I could probably connect that right there. And then I need to draw like a thumb line, right? Whoops. Oh, my photograph is moving. I forgot to lock this photograph down. So let's click on this photograph and go to our layer panel, Windows, Layers. Let's find that photograph. It's somewhere in here, right there. All right, I'm gonna lock that photograph. All right, that photograph's locked down. So now if I grab this hand and I move it here, I forgot the thumb here. Let's trace the thumb. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm not going to trace the fingernail. Zoom in, Dave. You can do that. All right. You can just trace the thumbnail as a separate shape. See how I was adding an anchor there? That's kind of it's because this whole thing is selected. If I deselect that thumb, take my pen tool, then I can draw, you know, a line here. Okay. So there's my thumb. If I give this like a flesh-colored fill color, can I put that right here? Let's give that a flesh color. And this thing won't fill with color, will it? If I do a fill, it'll go on the other side. Oh, kind of. All right, so one way to do this, let's see if live paint works. Will live paint work? No, it won't because filled. So a lot of people, when they draw their shapes, end up closing a shape like that when they draw. And then when you try to add it back to your picture, you have this line here. This line right here. So if you take your direct select tool and you click it, let's see what happens. Boom, it vanished, and you have that same fill problem you had with some of you had with your flats. You know, if this kind of thing happens, you can always just take your pen tool and you can, you know, draw another shape here. You can say no outline, right? And you can stick it underneath. You could patch up your work. Let's put that under my hand. So you grab your direct select tool and, you know, you can move your anchors around here. And you can patch up your work. Just make sure it's on a different layer. I should add another anchor. All right, so it's not perfect, but let me show you what I want you to do with this hand. This line doesn't look like this line, right? So in order to make this line look better, I'm going to grab all these lines here, and instead of, I'm going to change the brush definition. And again, go to my brush library. We'll go to artistic charcoal pencil, and then I'm going to go to this last one, pencil thin line. And I've got this pencil thin line right here. I should fix that little fill right there, but oh, I forgot to fill this finger. Can I fill that? All right. I forgot these lines as well. If I were to take my pen tool and draw in these details, again, you know, you can just I don't think we require like this level of detail on your croquis, but if you wanted to make finger lines, you're welcome to. Let's grab these and do those pencil lines here. Move these down. All right. And once you have a hand, you know, you can take this and you can group it. You have a hand. And you have an eye. Let me show you. So yeah, for this, go ahead and trace this with the pen tool. Change the the line to pencil thin. You don't need to color these. You do not need to color these hands. I was just going to show you something here. So for this drawing here, let me show you how to, I'll show you some tips on how to draw hands, even though they're overlapping on the body, and how to bring in some shading. All right, let's get started on that. So I'm going to take this photo here, and for tracing, I'll bring the opacity down. And then I will lock the image. I think she's right here. Here's lock the image, and now I can start tracing with the pen tool. And it's too difficult to trace hands covering the body and then have the pen tool go back and forth along the fingers, as you saw in that video from last week. The best way is just to draw stumpy hands, stumpy legs, a stumpy neck, and then on a separate layer we draw hands. On a separate layer you draw the head, and a separate layer you draw the feet. So let me show you how to do that. The pen tool, make sure you're drawing with the black ink, of course. No fill. I mean, you can draw with a flesh colored ink, or you could even draw with no ink if you didn't want the outline. It's all up to you. So for this neck area, we want to have a long neck. So to give us enough space, we're going to start the neck here at the temple area for next to her eyeball where the headache starts. And then we're going to draw in our curve right here, our first neck curve. And then we're going to continue drawing body here. And I'm going to do this very quick and dirty sketch here. Now you see when I get to the hands, I'm actually going a little bit farther than the hand. I'm going to draw this like stump in there, and I'm going to cover the stump with a new hand. Do this real quick. And not accurate, but you're going to get the idea. I'm not going to do this whole thing. We'll just kind of pretend like we did her body. And again, when you do the legs, you don't do the feet, just make like stumpy ankles. And then we'll draw the feet on a separate layer. All right, so I'm going down the hands here. And I'm going to create this stump again on the around the shoulder. Oops. Clip that handle. Then her neck is somewhere in here. I'm assuming it's right here. I'm going to go right up to the eyeball. And then I'm going to close this shape. Once I have the shape closed, you know, and if I were to give it a color, there it is, right? With a super long neck. Totally accurate. Oh yeah. All right, so let's once we have this shape, I can make it disappear and start working on other things like the head. But I'm not going to do a super perfect job with that. All right. This is not her head. This is actually her face. Her head goes like, you know, up into here. And then, so once you have the face here, so along with the body, you know, you can start to change, you know, the size, the angle. You can start to, you could make the neck a little narrower if you wanted. If you wanted to. Right. Experiment with that. You can even use your eyes that you drew earlier. We'll copy and paste that. Copy and paste those two, and we could reflect. Now look what happened to the eyes when I shrunk them, because the stroke width stayed the same, but the size changed. So when that happens, you know, you might want to bring the stroke width down to match. And we'll bring these to the front. And you know, when you draw hair, I don't want you drawing like. You be careful with that, because. So here's a quick and dirty hairstyle. All right, so you draw hair. Let's say you make it black, right? I don't want like a big helmet-looking shape. You can break up the shape with other shapes. Let me deselect so it doesn't change color again. You know, some highlights here. So, you know, sometimes it looks something like this. Just a couple of shapes would be plenty to make it not look like it was just like a helmet on her head. You guys can study layers of hair. You can definitely add visual interest. You can, you know, you draw loops, you add color. It just makes things look a little better, right? Let me show you the hands here. So let me show you some areas that we want to add some shading. So I'm gonna remove this head and eye. Let's see, the hair. Let's reduce that. The face, turn that visibility off. All right, so here's the face. So I could take my pen tool and I could draw like a little shading under the chin here. And for shading, all you got to do is take this shape and just make it straight up black, and then reduce the opacity to like 30% or so. And then, you know, when you put your shape over it, whoops, let's bring this. I'm gonna put my neck shading under my face here. You know, a little bit of shading under the neck goes a long way. If you know how shading works, and you can add some volume to your shapes here, uh, 35%. No? And the torso is basically a cylinder here, so I'm not going to draw this whole thing, but you can certainly add your black 35%. Add some shading, and you know, you can adjust your curves, of course, as you. And you start getting some volume, some visual interest. For hands, okay, so I'm gonna move all this stuff out of the way so I can draw my hands here. And so Let's take this fill off. And the key to doing all this, I think, is just zooming in. And I know you can get more accurate than this. P for pen tool. First knuckle. Second knuckle. Third knuckle. Pinky. Oh, there's a fill here. Let me turn this fill off. Let me zoom in. P for pen tool. And there's so many tutorials on pen tool tips and tricks. This is just one way. I'm not going to do these finger lines because it's impossible to go down and then back. I'm just going to draw those in later. Oops. Handle. This one I could probably go down. All right, so there is a hand. Let me draw this. All right. There's a little color. And then, as you can see, when I draw my body, I gave her green hands. Look at that. Now we have a hand on top of the hips. Everyone see that? And then, you can draw a little bit of shading. You could probably even add a little, kind of cheat and go out, drop shadow. Ooh. You experiment with that, or you just draw in your shading by hand. But that's pretty much it for your croquis. So if you forget how to get your variable line width for your eyeballs, they're right here. You just have to click on it with your selection tool. Click on the line, then you get these options here. That's what, whoops. What this picture is about. And this one here is where to find your brushes for your pencil thin lines or something. Yeah, and then look at this wrist here. So sometimes there's a line here and people don't want to have a line. If I take my direct select tool and I click on this line right here and hit delete, I can delete that line. And that way I can, get a nice clean hand. Look at that. Oh my God. Selection tool, not direct select tool. And this is, I think, wrong hand. Let's reflect it. Left hand. And let's break her hand. Yeah, that works. Look at that. She's got a hand coming out of her butt. All right, you guys know what to do. You can do this much better. Let's bring this hand up. It's a little big. She looks like the Buddha now. All right. I can't do this without making her look like she's asking for some cash. All right. Don't stand in front of the restaurant. It's way too long. Fix it. Draw a new hand. I don't know. Whatever. But that's how you get rid of the line right here. You just click on it with your direct select tool. The whole thing will highlight, so it looks like you're going to delete everything. If that happens, just Control Z, click on empty space first, then click on the line, and that line will vanish. And that's how you do that. All right, so I'll let you guys work on that. I'll stay here. You ask questions while you're working. Oh wait, let me talk about project 2. All right, so project 2 is due next week, all right? And there is an example here. So if we look at our folder, projects, project 2. Okay, so for project 2, we will need to see a theme and season on the board. I don't know what happened here. You can put a background image if you like. If you don't want to put a background image, I would like to see just a line between the ankle and the calf muscle. On the second page of your project, I will need to see the photos you used to do your faces and your body. So this student did it with the pen tool. And as you can see, you know, used everything. Whoops. She used the gradients. She used, she made shapes of different colors. In her hair, instead of, she used a gradient here. We have 1, 2, 3 shapes to just give that highlight. She did a similar thing for Kerry Washington over here in her hair. She drew in a couple highlights right here. Right. She also has the clavicle here. You know, we could draw that in too for our drawing here. Would like to see a clavicle, little line here for that bone. For a little visual interest here. She has quite a bit. She has shading here on her clothing, details on the clothing. Gotta love that. So to find your background image, let me show you. There is a new web space here called website called Unsplash, unsplash.com, and you can get a lot of high-res, commercial-free, copyright-free images. Excuse me. So if you type in here like perspective, you know, in any location, you'll get like lots of photos that you could potentially. Some of these are you have to purchase.
So using photos on our project will be a copyright infringement?
No, you can use your own photos. If you use, yeah, you can for the background. I think it's okay. This is premium stock. Let's see. This is all these pictures on this website are royalty free. You can use them with no problem, and you can just grab
I
these
thought
pictures.
that copyright, like, it didn't, because we weren't selling it, so we could just use any photo.
Eventually, if you have like your portfolio and you start promoting yourself, there's a little gray area in there where people, if the owner of the photo could call you and say, you know, stop using my pictures to make money. At this point, yeah, you can do it, but you know, eventually the work that you do, and a lot of people's project twos turn out quite stunning, and they end up putting it in their portfolio. So you might want to future protect yourself by making sure your photos are image royalty free. I'm not going to do a reverse image search on everything. I'm going to leave it up to you all to police yourselves with that. But this Unsplash website, I don't know how long it's going to be available for. Has just tons and tons of great pictures that you can use without any issue. Just make sure your croquis don't look super tall.
And do we trace the background, or?
No, you could just add the background. So like what I did over here, you know, I just put a background behind the picture. You don't have
Okay.
to put a background. You can just put a line here behind, between the ankle and the calf. Just one line. You don't even need this gradient background. Just bare minimum is a line here. Um, if you have two models, make sure the line stretches like behind both models, right? Don't give me two separate lines because it's a horizon line. And if you want to do a photograph, don't squish the photograph. So don't take a photograph and try to make it fit. So for example, let me find a wide picture. So someone really likes, say, this picture right here, and then they copy it and they bring it in to Photoshop here, and you see, like, here's your artboard. It's right here, this black square, and you're like, oh, I love this picture. You know what? I'm just going to do this, and don't do this. Don't squish your picture into the artboard because we can see it. It looks distorted. On your projects, you will lose points for distorted imagery. So all you got to do in Illustrator is hit this crop button right here, and you can just crop your picture to fit in your artboard. And that works too. You can use your own photographs as well. I don't mind. The only issue is she's really tall. It's Attack of the 50-foot woman in the middle of the street. So, be aware of your backgrounds. Try to get them to. So in order to get the scale right, we would probably have to hold the shift key down and make it quite large. That's looking a little bit better. Let's see if I go probably more. Now, then we start getting in pixelation range. It starts looking a little pixelated. But yeah, that's how you do that. So don't squish your images. Is my point. Just crop your images. If it starts to look too fuzzy, you can always just run it through imagetrace. Let's see if that helps. We'll go high fidelity photo. Then you get this kind of stylized background, kind of matches the artwork, You could do that as well. Again, don't necessarily need a photograph. Yeah, and for croquis, since we're tracing it, I don't think, I think we're altering the imagery enough that we're not going to be hit with any kind of copyright violation. But these are all just different techniques you can use. If you have a photo you really like, you can run it through a filter. You run it through imagetrace, and then it stops being the photo, I guess. Let's see, project 2. So go back to that. So we have Unsplash here. Does someone have a question? Caitlin?
I had a question. So I had an issue with project 1. So my computer crashed before I was finished putting the patterns onto my flats. So I had to make 2 separate PDFs, one with the flats and one with the patterns I made. So for project 2, I would basically have to, because nothing's saved on Illustrator, so I would basically have to trace my flats again and put the patterns on.
You only have a PDF?
I had, for project 1, it had to be a PDF of my flats and then a PDF of
I know, but
patterns.
originally you should have drawn it in Illustrator and saved it as an Illustrator file. So
Yeah.
did you start drawing and do the entire project without saving once and saved it as a PDF at the end?
I think I forgot to save it.
All right, well yeah, you're gonna have to do it again.
Okay.
So like, so I've said before, when you're doing your work, you save your original file in the beginning. The first thing we do is we hit save and change the name.
Yeah.
That way, if your computer crashes, you can recover your work. Okay, so save your work early, save it often. You don't need to. I mean, for project 2, you're going to be everybody is redrawing their flats. We're not taking our flats from project 1 and dragging it over and then trying to fit it onto a croquis. I do have like maybe 7 students. Not 7. I get about 3 to 5 students per section that actually try to do that. Like they'll take their flat and they'll just copy and paste it over, and it'll look kind of like when you cut out paper clothing and you stick it on a Barbie. It kind of looks like that. And you know, there's like 100 anchors per flat, if not more, and that's a lot of things to move around. It's not impossible. I have seen people do it, but let me show you how to draw. So there's a website out here called idrawfashion.com. It's one word, idrawfashion. And they have lots of great tutorials on how to render clothing on top of a croquis. So for example, if you click on clothing here, I mean, a lot of these cost money, but you do have some free stuff here. Like it will say free. So this one here, this ripped jeans one is free. And it shows you, you can see here in the beginning, you have your croquis not wearing any clothing. And where the area is fitted on the body, you don't need to draw any lines. So her line actually starts here where it stops becoming fitted and starts to go a little loose. And then she draws, she kind of anticipates where the clothing, the fabric is going to be laying on the body. A little bit out here, maybe tight in here, a little bit looser toward the cuffs. And she loosely draws that in. And then once she has her shape here, starts drawing in details, you can start adding these like fold lines here. Like there's a little fold line on pants. So you can start seeing, on this website in particular, there's a lot of little great details here, like a fold line here, a fold line there, a fold line here, you know, to show fabric gathering or bunching up on your figure. A lot of little helpful hints of how to draw clothing, like say pants, how to draw dresses. Shoes, there's a great free tutorial here on how to draw shoes too. I should put this on one of the exercises, how to draw shoes. Basically, you know, once you have your stumpy leg here, you don't have your foot. The foot is the same length as the head of your body. So they just took that distance, drew two straight lines out of here with a circle on the bottom. They divided this into 3 equal sections, 3 equidistant sections. The third section, they drew a circle here, a little bit wider than the width. And once you have that, you just reduce the opacity or just get rid of this whole curve right here and just keep this top curve. And that is the toe bump right here. And then they just connected the points from the bottom of this circle here. From this point here, they just drew like a triangle. And that's how you draw your shoe. It's very simple. Just a little line right here, a little toe bump right there. You know, she drew like some ballet straps here, but you know, extend the bottom part for your sole. Very easy. You know, I don't want to see square, like I have students, their feet look like this. The model stepped into Kleenex boxes and is walking around clop clop like a robot. So look around. There's plenty. You know, Google's your friend. Google. There's lots of tutorials. Even on, I provided here on this. Here, you have access as Kent State students to LinkedIn Learning, and they do have like a bunch of free video tutorials on how to draw flats, or on, I think these are rendered on a body. These are, you know, it's quite a lot of detail here. But in between Linda Learning, which you have access to, which you can get to from this link, also with the Creative Cloud, somewhere I have Creative Cloud, there are tutorials, tons of tutorials over here on Creative Cloud that you can go to for all the Adobe apps. And you type in, you know, different topics. You can go beginner or experienced. And this is all free for you. You have access to it. It's not free in the real world, but I urge you to take advantage of these resources here. Oh, here's that Pantone color forecast. We'll talk about that next week. It's WGSN. Lots of different poses here. There is a link right here. You can go and look at all these different poses on different websites if you want to start trying something a little bit more daring or dynamic, this website here definitely talks about all different kinds of stuff that you can look at. So next week, I do want to see this project done. We do have 2 croquis need to be drawn. And again, if you draw it by hand and do live paint, it doesn't take very long to finish. You will need to, for our critique, you will need to combine these 2 projects into one single PDF. So let me show you how that looks. Do I have, where's my example? So you can see here, I'll show you some more examples here of project 2. So we have the title, we have the theme here. This is a landscape view. This was a hand-drawn one. She drew it with a pencil, drew her clothing on top of her croquis, dropped it in here, live painted it. She added a little bit of shading. I would have liked to see some more shading, but a little bit of shading here where the clothing meets the body, a little bit of shading under the neck. And then she drew in Illustrator, she drew her faces. And the rest of this is just image traced stuff. Again, so this student doesn't have any background at all, but does have the horizon line behind the ankles. I mean, between the ankle and the calf. That's really all you need. It has some shading on the clothing. I would like to see some shading to show volume on the body and on the clothing. You can see under the little skirt here. So this is an example of a student that kind of, she may have dragged that one in from project 1 and moved anchors around because it looks kind of straight and out. And here are her reference pictures with her elongated legs, right? This one here is another one that was hand drawn. We saw this from our in-class work, Miss Rooser's work. So we all participated in trying to fill this with color. But you see what happened here was she didn't draw her faces separate, so that when she did the image trace and increased the thickness of the line, she started to lose detail in the face. Right, the eyes got a little thick, the lips got thick, as opposed to someone who just draws the faces independently and then shrinks them down in Illustrator. You can get like something that looks like that, which is visually striking versus a little bit loss of detail. But there's nothing wrong with that. We're not looking at the face, we're looking at the clothing, right? She put a background image here with some shading on the legs, on the torso, on the clothing. Nice work. And then here is a student that didn't really need to put this little blob underneath the feet, but does have an image back here to show perspective. And you can see really well here for the hair, instead of having one big blob of yellow, she did add some shapes. And really, not many shapes were necessary. Just this one has 1, 2, 3 anchors. This one has 1, 2, 3, 4 anchors. These just really simple shapes here, just to break up that big solid space. Here, I think that looks like Rihanna. A little bit of shading here on the back of the hair and some highlights in the front. That's really all you need. I don't need you to draw every single hair on the body. Do I have an example? Somebody like this who started drawing in. I will get examples where people take a pencil tool and try to draw in every single hair. Don't do that. You're going to create like a ton of anchors, and you may have difficulty getting your file under 20 megs. Right? It doesn't take a lot of. You don't have to fixate on all the strands of hair. But yeah, so let me show you how to do a combo PDF. So when you're done with your work, of course, you're going to open Adobe Acrobat DC, and you have your file saved as an Illustrator file, and you have your file saved as a PDF. We want to combine it into, we want to combine your project 1 with your project 2. So I'm going to hit this Tools button right here, Adobe Acrobat, and we're going to hit this Combine Files button, and then we need to add files. So I'm going to navigate to where I have project 1 and project 2. So here's a project 1 that I'm going to add in, and then you can expand. There are two different ways to view this. This is this hamburger button right here, the 3 lines, is your detail view, and you can see how big your PDF is. So I see right here it's 1.2 megabytes. I go to thumbnail view right here. You can expand the thumbnails and see the order of your pictures. If you discover a couple of these slides are out of order, I want my one piece to go last, you can just click and drag it and say front goes first, this, and then your photo references, and then we want to add your croquis here. So I'll go to project 2 and add this one. Again, we can expand the pages and look at it. So these are all the pages in my combo PDF. I can look at my sizes and see my project 2 is 6 megabytes, so 6 plus 7, so I'm getting close to 10 megabytes. We can't go over 20 megabytes for this project, so be aware of how to look at the file size. And once I have that, I can hit the combine button, and you see I have one PDF with all the pages, including project 1 and 2. And this PDF you're going to put onto Slack for our critique. This one says binder 1 and it's hidden someplace. We need to resave this with our name on it. So after we hit the combine button, go to File, go to Save As. I'm going to navigate to my Fashion Tech folder, PDF folder, and we're going to change the name here from binder 1. This is very important. If you hand in something that says binder 1, you're going to get a 0. So change your name. Put your name on your word. And then project 2 combo. Right. And there it is, multi-page. So this goes on to Slack. Now now don't forget to upload it to Blackboard too. You click right here on the project 2 header, and you can upload that same combo PDF if you want. If you go over 20 megs, you can separate it. I only need project 2 on Blackboard, but if you want to give me the combo, that's fine. Now for Slack, I will need the combo. And next week, you all need to psychologically prepare yourself to turn your cameras on. You might want to dress professionally for your critique. It never hurts. Always, and this is also practice for when you're walking around the building. We have VIPs, CEOs, CFOs. We have famous designers at Kent State that are walking around the building, visiting or doing some business here. You never know. You may run into on the elevator a future prospective employer. You'll have like 30 seconds to make a good impression on them. And everyone, first impressions are very strong. So in professional development, they'll talk to you about elevator pitches, how to concisely in 30 seconds, say everything you want to say. But I think all you really need to do is just be able to make good eye contact and say your name with volume and projection clearly. So when I'm grading your critiques next week, and I'm trying to remember, how did this student do in their presentation? If you have a strong intro, then that will anchor in my head more than any of the details that you give in your presentation. And I will tend to grade based on your intro sentence. So if you're a little shy, go in front of the mirror, practice projecting. You might want to think of it like this. If you have trouble projecting your voice, pretend your friends have your ticket to that thing that you've been waiting to go to forever. They're in a car, the windows are shut. You're just out of reach. You can't slap the car. They're starting to pull away. So all you need to do is get their attention. But their windows are closed. So you have this volume. Hey, come back. That volume, put that in your head. And that's where you say, hey, my name's David Hahn. You're driving away with my tickets. My name is, fashion student so-and-so, and I'm going to be talking to you today about falling into spring. Here's my collection. You give me a great intro, you'll get a great presentation grade. All right, so you'll upload your project 2 here in the project area. This is in the projects folder under your lab folder. And then for Slack, you'll put your combo PDF for presentation tomorrow. And then next week, we'll start going into Photoshop in detail and talking about project 3. Okie dokie. All right, everyone, keep working. I'm going to stay right here online for you to all get to work on your in-class work. And if you have a question, just shout it out, and I will help you.
Okay, so I'm working on extending my references right now. I just wanted to. I forgot how to cut out the hand.
You're looking at references? Oh, yeah, the picture. Okay, so Photoshop.
Yeah. Mhm.
All right. So let me show you some things about Photoshop. If you want to go back in time, there is what's called a history panel. This differs from Illustrator. Illustrator, you just hit Control-Z and you go back one step at a time. With Photoshop, you have something called the history panel, and you can see about the last 20 moves that you make. And you can adjust, you have options here on how many moves you want to record. But 20 is usually if you realize you need to redo something 20 moves later, more than 20 moves, then you may need to readjust, your history options. But 20 moves is usually a good number. So I'm going to go back to before I cut the hands out. All right, so I'm right here. So I stretched out the canvas 120%. I squished the feet already. I've got my marquee box here around her legs. I'm going to try to move this up a little bit, try to get as much leg as possible. I've got her feet and her legs, but I also have her hands. I don't want that, so I'm going to grab my lasso tool. And if you have a PC, you hold the Alt key down. If you have a Mac, you're holding your Option key, which is also your Alt key. And you'll see that little minus sign appear in the lower right-hand corner of your lasso. And then you can just draw circles here and cut out the hands. Then you do a free transform edit.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Hold the Shift key down when you're doing it. Boom, 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 and you stretch it out. Keep working, everyone. I'm here. You know what? Give me 5 minutes. I'm going to go refill my tea. I'll come right back. All right, I'm still going to be here. I'm just going to stop the recording since I'm not talking. Unless anyone has a question about anything that they want to put on the recording. So I'm going to end the recording. I'm still going to be here. Class is still going on, but so keep working on your file. But recording is over.